cover. So thanks for having us here. First of all, I'm Jake Fisher. I traveled from Connecticut, where we have our test track at Consumer Reports. And welcome to, well, maybe the world's worst award show, mostly because nobody gets an award, no matter how good the products are. And also, unlike other events where we talk about good products, we're also going to be talking about bad products too. So you can imagine the Oscars where they said, okay, and also this is the worst movie of the year. You're going to get that here too. So first of all, let's talk about a little bit what we do. And I love this picture because this is my office. So we have a 327-acre test facility in central Connecticut, and it's a nice place to evaluate vehicles. So we do more than 50 tests on every one of the vehicles that we test. We really put them through the paces. We assess everything from acceleration and braking, all that on a test track that is monitored to make sure that everything is consistent. We look at all the creature comforts and all those things as well. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about how the cars do. This really kind of separates Consumer Reports from basically anyone who talks about the best cars. This isn't just about how the cars drive. This is about everything about the car. So just to kind of reiterate first, talk about what we're talking about today. We're talking about overall scores. This is a Consumer Reports overall score. And that's how we assess what are the top picks. That's how we assess who makes the best cars in terms of stacking up the brands. And in that overall score are, yes, the 50 and more tests that we do at our track. And the things, you drive the vehicles, how much do you enjoy that car, how does it perform, all those pieces. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. The other piece, and very important to customers who are buying these cars, is reliability. And that's where we go to our survey. And we have more than 500 responses on these vehicles. And that's how we determine the reliability. Not about what happened at the track and whether or not it went back to the dealer. It's about what real people are experiencing in these vehicles. So that's a big piece of it. So we look at the reliability, heavily weighed into the overall score. We also look at owner satisfaction. So people are not just telling us what broke, but also, was the car what they expected? Would have they done it again if they had the chance to do it over again? And that is absolutely revealing. And then also safety. So there's other safety pieces in it. Obviously, that's important too. When you look at people who are buying cars, they care about the safety. Again, it's not something you can assess when you go and test drive the vehicle, or when you put a week in a car and say, wow, it drives nice. So safety, and we're looking at a couple of pieces there. One, electronic shifter safety. This is in there too. And we see more of these cars. The official term is a monostable shifter, but it's like these newfangled shifters that it's not always clear what gear you're in. And we're looking to make sure that there are safety checks in there to make sure that if you accidentally put in the wrong gear, the emergency brake goes on, or goes automatically into park. We're looking at crash test results. So that is very important. If you have a poor crash test result, that's really going to hurt your score. And I don't care how reliable it is. I don't care how good the car is. But if the car does not do well in crash safety, it's really not a good choice. And the other piece is front crash prevention features. And you've heard me talk a lot about this, I'm sure. Forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. These are features that are available right now. We're seeing more and more of them, and they absolutely prevent crashes. The data is there. We want to see them in every new car. And some of the auto manufacturers are making them standard. We're only giving points if they are standard, because that makes the difference. And when the auto manufacturer goes and makes it standard, they're going to see their scores improve. So speaking of scores improving and top picks, I'm going to actually hand it over to our lead autos editor, Patrick Olson.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I just want to clear up one thing that Jake said. We have reliability data on more than 500,000 cars, not 500 cars. So for those of you who are wondering, yes, exactly. So this is a new job for me. I worked somewhere else for a long time before I came here, and it was a little bit of night and day when I got into the cars that CR buys. That wasn't the case where I worked before, and living with these cars for a long time, the people at the track, they live in them, they put their families in them, they take them places. it's a very different experience, and I give a lot of credit to the press fleets who managed to keep the cars I drove all the time before in really tip-top shape, because living in them, you get a whole different sense for them. So for us, as Jake said, part of it is the testing, but I get to do the happy Oscar part of this, where I talk about the top picks. I'll let Jake talk about the less happy part on the brand reliability. But for us, it's definitely a long-term testing situation. So here are Consumer Reports' 10 top picks for 2018. Oh, I missed that slide where we talk about how we live in it. First up for us is the Chevy Bolt. So the first 7 cars in here are new to the list for this year, so that's important to keep in mind. The Bolt is proof that an electric car can really be a functional daily driver. It has strong driving performance. It got great range. We got 250 miles on it when we tested its range, and it really reduces range anxiety. As someone who used to drive a Nissan Leaf a lot, way back when it first started, I felt that anxiety, and the Bolt has done a good job of getting rid of that. In addition, it sits high. You get a view more like an SUV than in a compact car, which is also very nice. Second on our list is a familiar name, the Toyota Camry. So Toyota does very well on our top picks this year. They have 4 cars on here, and in fact, in the 22 years we've been doing this, they have had 59 cars on our top picks list, the most of any automaker. They're definitely helped by their reliability, and they're definitely helped by their devotion, I would say, to advanced safety systems across their cars. In particular, the Camry is helped by its strong reliability. It was last on this list in 2016, and it's been redesigned. Now, that redesign brought improved handling, more styling flair, and improved fuel economy. And in fact, on the hybrid version, it gets 47 miles per gallon in our testing, which is really in sort of Prius, stratosphere, without any compromises that you might have to make for a hybrid. So that's pretty impressive. Next for us is the Toyota Corolla. Oddly, the Corolla has never been a top pick for us at CR before this year. I thought that was pretty remarkable. It's reliable. It's got a roomy interior and roomy backseat, which is not always the case amongst compact cars. It only has decent power, but it has excellent MPG, and it's got a ride that's better than most of the class that it's in. Next up is a Sienna minivan. Last on the list in 2016. It's got a comfortable ride, an energetic powertrain, which, believe it or not, minivan drivers really want. And it has respectable MPG. And of course, as minivan owners know, it's the only one out there with all-wheel drive, which, if you're going to be 80 degrees one day and snowy the next day, that's kind of an important thing. Next up on our list is the Audi A4. It's the first time we've given an award to a luxury compact car for this list. It's sporty, luxurious, and polished, and it does very well in a very competitive class. It accelerates with gusto, has decent MPG, and is very satisfying to drive. It's got responsive steering and not much body roll, so that helps it win for us. Next up is the F-150. Pickups are hot, and the F-150 is leading the way in that category. Last time it was on the list was in 2016. It's impressive and innovative. It's really a workhorse with quick acceleration and standout fuel economy, 19 miles per gallon, which is pretty good for a pickup truck these days. Thanks to its potent 2.7-liter engine and the weight drop, we've come to really like this truck. Next up, the BMW X3. It's the first time we've given an award to a luxury compact SUV. And for us, it's sort of a driver's dream. It combines driving enjoyment, comfort, slick technology with utility. Next up, the Toyota Highlander SUV. This is one of the cars that was on last year's list. And why is it back? It's because of its all-weather traction, roomy interior, and it's an SUV that is great for family hauling and doesn't look like a minivan. And there, for some people, that's hugely important. It's got good performance, good MPG, and is reliable. It's large enough to carry 8 people, but it's small enough to park easily, which is crucial. Next up, the Subaru Forester, another repeat performer. It's been on this list for 5 years running. So obviously it does well across the board. It's a little wonder. It's practical. It's small, but it's functional over flash. The Forester is easy to get in and out of, and it drives well. And its 2.5-liter engine offers decent performance. and exceptional MPG. Last up on our list is the Chevy Impala, another repeat performer. This is its 4th straight year on our list. It offers a luxurious ride, but at an affordable price. It's got a spacious cabin that's also quiet. Its handling is commendable, especially for its size. And now I'm going to hand the reins back here to Jake to take a stab at the brand report card.
All right, thank you. Yep. So I am not one of the top picks, so I'm not the 11th top pick. But yeah, I'm going to talk about brands. So this is a little bit different metric. It's one thing to get one really good car. It's another thing to get the entire portfolio all good. So what we've done is we've actually taken, the math is easy, folks. It's really just about taking those overall scores and just averaging them across the brand and seeing what brands wind up on top. So let's get right into it. So this is the top. We'll start at the top and we'll go all the way down to the bottom. Number 1, new for this year, is a brand called Genesis. So this is the first time it's appeared on our list. And those who know, there's only 2 cars by Genesis right now, the G80 and the G90. They're both high-end luxury cars. So while it absolutely is very impressive to have number 1 in the brand report card, keep in mind it's a limited lineup right now. What's going to be very interesting is down the road. I mean, obviously we're going to see more affordable cars from Genesis. We're going to see SUVs from Genesis. And if they could kind of keep that same quality, and I hate using the word quality because there's reliability, but also kind of the interior, the luxury that the cars have, and the way they have been able to implement technology without making them really distracting and really complicated. This is something that Hyundai and Kia and Genesis, they have all been able to do quite well. Going down the list, Audi, no surprise there, that's done well in terms of reliability, both in our survey, but also the performance has been there as well. And you see a fair amount of luxury marks. You've got BMW, Lexus, Porsche, but interestingly enough, Kia. This is right up there near the top. And this is not a very expensive brand. This is a car company that has been able to make reliable vehicles that drive well, and they're very competitive across the brand. And you know, you may wonder why they didn't make any top picks, but I will tell you that there was at least 2 Kias that were really close in terms of making top picks. And even just something like if Kia went and made forward collision and automatic emergency braking standard, they probably would have gotten the top pick. So they're that close. Going down the list, again, Subaru, not a very expensive brand. They've got a fairly full line. Not huge volumes, but they consistently make cars that people really like, that are reliable. Tesla. And Tesla is a tale, I've told this story before, but it's a tale of 2 Teslas. There is the Tesla Model S, which does phenomenally in our test at the track. Very high satisfaction. Someone is watching, they're doing the home game over there. So in terms of Tesla, so Model S does very well. The reliability, we have data on the Tesla Model S. It's above average. But then there's the Tesla Model X, which takes that Tesla Model S and adds all this complexity to it. The Falcon Wing doors, other pieces, and it's really been on the bottom in terms of reliability. And it doesn't really test as well because anyone who's driven it, I mean, it's a lot more gimmick and less function, unfortunately. Toyota is there, solid number 10. Just want to draw your attention to this complex chart, predicted reliability. It's got our highest mark across the board in terms of reliability. This is the only brand that achieved that across the board when you average all of the models. This is where Toyota stands out. It's just reliability. They take a conservative approach to designing those vehicles. Maybe it doesn't always have the latest features, but they have cars that you could really depend on. Chrysler has moved up substantially this year. Again, I was talking about Genesis before, 2 cars. Chrysler actually is only 2 cars right now. It's Pacifica and Chrysler 300. The Pacifica is what made the difference for them. A new vehicle, kind of a new platform from Chrysler. We haven't seen a lot of that lately. A lot of Chryslers have been, kind of Fiats or old Mercedes-Benzes. This is a new platform from Chrysler, and it is great. It does well in our tests, and the reliability right away has proven itself. We see Hyundai there, drawing attention. We talked about Genesis, we talked about Kia. Why is Hyundai below those other ones? And this is something we've consistently seen, that often Hyundai gets the products first, Kia gets them later. And that actually turns out to be an advantage when it comes to Kia, because the cars, maybe they've worked out more problems, the reliability in our surveys are better, and sometimes they just drive a little bit better. Maybe they've found a little bit better way of tuning the suspension. I don't know. Going down the list, we see Mazda. Mazda's actually gone down a little bit. Some new product from them was disappointing in terms of reliability again. I was shocked to see the Mazda Miata turn in problems. They had some transmission problems. The new CX-9, again, new powertrain, a lot of new stuff, and there was some issues there, which was unfortunate. Just want to go through kind of some of the changes. Buick dropped a bit. Some new products, some new changes. New 8-speed automatics had some trouble there. Some reliability issues. Acura dropped quite a bit. So we see Acura at 22. This is really disappointing. This is a brand that is known for, well, there's a reputation of reliability and there's a reputation for luxury. Unfortunately, many Acura products are neither luxurious or reliable. In fact, the only one that has decent reliability right now is the Acura RDX in our surveys, and that car is being redesigned this year. Cadillac, right down near the bottom, and that's unfortunate too. These are cars that perform so well. If I ignored reliability, I might just buy a Cadillac myself. They are terrific driving vehicles, but the reliability has been really problematic throughout the brand. Going down the list, maybe some surprises, maybe not some surprises. Ram, we have seen some improvement in terms of reliability of the Ram 1500, which is a absolutely competitive truck. And then the very bottom, sorry, we will talk about these, Alfa Romeo, Land Rover, Jeep, and Fiat. And when you look at these cars, again, we're assessing so many different things. We're looking at the reliability. We're also looking at performance and other things. You look at Fiat, this is a car company that, well, these are brands that, unfortunately, they don't do well in our testing, and they don't do well in terms of reliability either. And owner satisfaction is not good either. So the people who buy Fiats, unfortunately, are very disappointed, and our ratings really explain why. Jeep, second at the bottom. There is certainly a satisfaction, I think. There are certain people who buy Jeeps for other reasons than a reliable car or the quietness and the comfort, and we do get that. And there actually has been some bright spots in terms of reliability in Jeep. The Cherokee, they've improved the reliability to average, so there's some hope. Land Rover, again, the reliability, Alfa Romeo, the reliability is just not very good, and the way the cars perform in our testing is unfortunately not that competitive with some of the other options. So, on that sad note, I'm going to hand it over to David Friedman, who is from our Washington, D.C. office, and he's the director of car policy. So, without further ado, it's all yours.
With that somewhat depressing lead in. Well, hi, everyone. My name is David Friedman, and I'm also a newbie, like Patrick. I joined about 8 months ago, and this is, I think, a great opportunity to maybe kind of reintroduce myself to some of the folks here. I joined CR after about a couple of years at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, including running it during a very quiet year of the GM ignition switch and Takata airbag challenges, and then headed over to the Department of Energy. Part of the reason why I joined Consumer Reports is it is really an amazing organization that is data-driven, that has put safety and the consumer first since it was created more than 80 years ago. And it is a true leader when it comes to trying to make products better for consumers. And I have the honor of being able to work on the policy side. So what I wanted to do is kind of pivot off of all this great information about where cars and trucks are today to talk about where they may or may not go given where we are in the world of policy today. So first off, I want to set a baseline. And here's a general outline of what I want to cover, but I don't have the pretty pictures like everyone else, so you're going to have to look at this mug. I'm sorry. But first, setting a baseline in terms of where we are on safety. It is incredible. I mean, Jake and I will talk about this all the time about how if you had the choice between being in a 20-year-old family car or SUV today and one that you just bought, when it came to being in a crash between the two, hands down, there's just no second thought that you would always pick that new vehicle. So much progress has happened on safety over the last 20 years, both in terms of improving the structural safety, the number of airbags. I mean, there's actually now more airbags than cup holders in most cars, which is a huge accomplishment compared to where we were 10 or 20 years ago. And there's also a lot more active safety features. And you see that also show up in the rankings, as Jake mentioned, where you're more likely to get to be a top pick if you include some of these active safety features on board. But despite all that progress, 37,461 lives were lost. Families were shattered in 2016 on our roads because of highway fatalities, increasing 2 years in a row. This year, for 2017, early data shows that maybe things have about leveled off. But the most challenging thing is researchers and regulators don't quite know why it's going up. But I think what we do know is some simple answers to addressing that. Yes, we have to improve driver behavior, no doubt about that. But as an engineer, I'm also really encouraged by the opportunity for vehicle safety technology. Whether it's standardizing automatic emergency braking in every car and truck on the road, and other promising technologies like lane departure warning and maybe even blind spot warning. And then the next generation of all those technologies that can avoid hitting pedestrians, that can work at higher speeds, driver monitoring, new ways of combating driver distraction or drunken driving or things like that can help revolutionize the role of the driver in our cars. All these technologies are here or on the way. Though one marketplace challenge is all too often, you can't just buy those technologies. If you want some of these added safety features, you usually also have to buy luxury features. And safety should never be a luxury. You should never have to buy a high-end stereo or a panoramic sunroof in order to get a safety feature. And that's why, when it comes to our ratings, these technologies have to be standard to get those extra points. And that's one of the ways Jake and his team are moving the marketplace. Another big opportunity to move the market is through the regulatory pathway. But right now, as I think most of you all are aware, that's in reverse when it comes to safety. It's in reverse both when it comes to the regulatory side and the legislative side. When you look at, for example, the progress NHTSA has or hasn't made when it comes to auto safety regulations, we keep track of that through the regulatory agenda that OMB keeps track of. There were 26 rules listed on the fall regulatory agenda. Over half of those rules have made no progress, appear to be completely stalled. Another 11 have been delayed. So for the vast majority of them, taxpayer dollars haven't been spent wisely. You had all this investment to help make vehicles safer, and instead of carrying that investment through and delivering safety for consumers, so far, this administration has been stuck in neutral, or in some cases in reverse, because many of these are delays, and 3 or 4 of them are about deregulation, reducing safety or fuel economy technology when it comes to new vehicles. So despite the amazing progress of the last 20 years, we are at risk of these best and worst cars moving backwards when it comes to safety in the future. Same challenge is happening in Congress, where they're trying to tackle the ultimate future, hopefully, of safety and convenience, which is automated vehicles. If we get them right, we could nearly eliminate traffic fatalities and injuries on our roads. But instead of creating a race to be the safest, right now it appears that many in the auto industry and many on Capitol Hill are in a race simply to be first with the technology. And we're concerned about that. We're concerned that safety is not coming first on the Hill or in the administration when it comes to these vehicles. A lot of this, I think, this is a race, and people are afraid to be left behind on technology. But I think part of what these ratings show is the companies that invest in technology incrementally with safety first deliver some of the best products. I want to quickly pivot over to fuel economy as well, because that's another key priority, and it's an important factor in the ratings as well. Again, this is another place where there's been amazing progress over the last 10, 20 years. In fact, since 2002, fleet-wide, even with the significant increase in trucks, we've seen a 30% increase in fuel economy. It's incredible. And it hasn't been because of EVs. It hasn't been because of hybrids. It's been because of technology that a lot of consumers maybe don't even notice. Higher compression ratio engines, turbocharged, downsized engines, better transmissions, higher strength materials. In fact, I still remember, it probably wasn't too much past 2002, that a now former auto industry executive, pretty high up, told me, downsizing engines, we've done all that. There's no more left to happen when it comes to that technology. And yet you look at it today, and it is amazing what happens when you let the engineers in the auto industry get to work to deliver great technology for consumers. And they're just getting warmed up. Toyota and Honda are looking at potentially delivering diesel-like efficiency from gasoline vehicles. Stop-start technology went from 0 to 20% in the marketplace in just 5 years. And there's so much more on the way. But again, when you look at the regulatory and legislative landscape, they're talking about rollbacks. They're talking about creating windfalls for automakers by allowing them to get credits, to use credits that were expired. But even more importantly, the administration is potentially talking about gutting the fuel economy standards, which would end up costing consumers thousands of dollars more to keep their cars filled up, instead of using technology that pays for itself in fuel savings from month one. Now, as you can tell, we're concerned about the future. And yes, it's a tough environment for consumers right now when it comes to the future of fuel economy and safety. And I think that's ironic given all the technological progress. But we here at Consumer Reports, whether it's through our ratings, whether it's through our policy work, and the great journalism that the organization does, are committed to ensuring that all consumers have great options that are safer, more affordable, cleaner, and more reliable for all consumers. Thank you. Pitch it over to Jake.
Thank you, David. And I just wanted to say I'm just delighted to have Patrick and David join us, not just for this presentation, but just at Consumer Reports. Have been great, both great addition to our little family. So I'm going to have questions. We're going to allow you to ask any of your questions. I have one more slide, and it just really kind of comes off of what David's talking about. And in terms of the advancements of cars, and this is in our April issue too, and it's an eye chart, but I'll take you through it. We just wanted to take a deep dive into our testing. So we've got tests of cars going back to 1936. And we just wanted to look in recently, what has been going on with these cars? What has been the changes? Because, as David points out, when they ask for more fuel economy, well, we can't do that, or it's going to make the cars really light, and it's going to make the cars unsafe, and people won't want to buy these cars. So we just took three common vehicles, Camry, Honda CR-V, and Ford F-150. And we said, what's going on in the testing of these vehicles? And this outlines 20 years of fuel economy. But actually, if you look closely, it's actually only the last 10 years. We've seen amazing changes. So just to pull out a couple of numbers from this, the Toyota Camry, before 2012, was getting 24 miles per gallon out of a 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine. Our current test of the 2018 Camry, 32 miles per gallon. Went from 24 to 32. Oh, and by the way, it's faster now, and it's roomier now, and it's got more equipment now, and it's safer now. And you could go right down the list. It's really quite, and I'm not talking about the hybrid. I'm talking about, and the car went from a 5-speed automatic to an 8-speed automatic. but 0 to 60 went down from 9.6 seconds to 8 seconds with more comfort and more convenience. Honda CR-V, same animal. Going back before 2012, was getting 21 miles per gallon of a small SUV. Now, 28 miles per gallon. This is our testing, same way we do the testing. When 0 to 60 went from 10.6 seconds to 8.2. Much faster, much more fuel efficient, roomier, more equipment, more safety down the line. F-150 is my last example. Prior to 2011, was getting 14 miles per gallon of a big 5.4 liter V8. Our last test of the F-150, 19 miles per gallon. 0 to 60 times, again, went from 8.2 down to 6.8. Faster, more horsepower, roomier, more safety equipment, more convenience features. So this is just a little glimpse into the trends that we're seeing when we're going back in terms of our testing. So quite a bit. And with that, I'm going to open up to questions. A couple of ground rules. If you have questions, please stand up. Also, there's a microphone. Please talk into the microphone. I think we have our first customer over here. She's quick. Yes, thank you. Do you mind?
You made a pretty big deal last year about the shifters.
Yes.
And how the cars rolled away.
Yeah.
And I think that caught on pretty well. How's that working for you? Have you detected any manufacturers that have made changes as a result of that? And where does it stand now?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It was quite, to be honest with you, I was actually almost surprised myself how quickly some of the manufacturers reacted to it. I will say within a few weeks, we were getting phone calls with manufacturers outlining their plans to implement safety strategies, to implement automatically going into park when you turn off the car, automatically going to park when you do the sequence of opening up the door. So the vast majority, I would say at this point, actually have those safety features built into them. So they were very responsive.
So I have a question. David was talking about safety should never be a luxury option. As I recall back in the 60s when safety belts came on, that was a real, nobody wanted them, nobody wanted to pay for them, there were all that type of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about where that how safety items are becoming more standardized like Toyota's now?
Yeah.
That was the big thing when they did their Camry event with us last year, was that the safety items that's in the high-end Camry is the same safety items that's in the low-end Camry. Can you talk about that as a whole across the industry? Is there some manufacturers that are going safety first, and there's some that are still saying here you've got to pay a little extra for fancy stuff?
Yeah, I mean so it's exactly what's happening right now. It's some manufacturers, and it's not necessarily the ones that you might imagine. You might imagine that if you're spending $80,000 on a high-end BMW, you would get automatic emergency braking standard, or some of these features standard. And it's not necessarily those. They often charge extra. It's some manufacturers like Toyota that have, and Nissan has also made some statements to actually make some of the safety standard true for everyone. Everyone gets it. And Honda is another example. Honda, when they launched their Honda Civic, it was an option. It was a standalone option. You didn't have to get leather and whatnot. But the penetration was very, very low for a lot of the safety equipment. Very few actually wound up. That means very few in the used car market. So you have it as an option, but when the teenager or whatever is buying this used Civic, now that does not have that equipment. And Honda seems to be going in the right direction. So the new Honda Accord, standard equipment, automatic emergency braking, standard equipment for collision warning. And we're seeing a very quick move towards that.
Is that more with brands that are considered import brands, that nobody's really an import anymore? But is that, or are we seeing the classic American brands, or how are they doing on this?
So the question is it about imports? Is it about domestic cars?
But there's no such thing.
No, that's true. There's a lot of Toyotas built in America.
Everybody's international.
No, it's really up to that manufacturer. It's up to that manufacturer who is making those decisions. I certainly would love to see more of the domestic brands making statements about making the key safety features standard. We haven't seen a lot of that, but you know, I'm surprised not to see more of the European makes make those feature standards. But it's, you know, it's a little bit hit or miss right now, unfortunately. Yes.
Quick question, Jake, and I wouldn't be an apologist for your bottom 4 on the brand list, but I am curious, at least from an anecdotal standpoint.
Sure.
Fiat and Alfa Romeo do not have dealer networks, as we think of dealer networks. Land Rover, very competent group of dealers, but it's very much a boutique type organization. And my experience as a Jeep owner suggests that Jeep within the Fiat Chrysler family, they've got a dealer network that's really underprepared to service a specialty vehicle. So bottom line is, how does dealer network or lack thereof play into your satisfaction scores, and would that have a role in these being the bottom 4?
Right, right. Well, I'll tell you this, and not that I want to lay out kind of our secret sauce and how we determine overall score.
We like the secret sauce.
I know you would like it, and I'm sorry. I'll apologize right away. But owner satisfaction is a piece of it, but a smaller piece than reliability and performance. The reliability is really what's hurting those brands, not necessarily the satisfaction. So, and the reason I say that is because you're absolutely right, satisfaction can be swayed by those things. And if you look in your sharp eye, absolutely, the satisfaction of Jeep owners is actually quite high. For a variety of reasons, not just the dealer network, but also, you know, I could take the doors off and go off-roading. That's fun. I got that. But the reliability is really what's hurting them. In terms of, you know, great dealers and they, you know, you get the Keurig cup and they take care of you or they bring the car, it's still an inconvenience. You know, you talk to the person who has that car breakdown and they're in, you know, they're in the middle of a city or they need to get somewhere. It's always an inconvenience. So, I mean, a lot of people talk about Tesla, that take care of you and they'll bring the car or whatnot. You know, if you have a breakdown, I had a flat tire once in a Tesla, and there's no tire to be found, and there's no spare tire. That was an inconvenience. Not that's a reliability issue, but again, that inconvenience of being stranded is a big deal.
Thank you.
You finished up your presentation by talking about something we've all noticed, and that's smaller displacement engines, more horsepower,
Yep.
better fuel economy, all these great things, more safety improvements.
Yep.
What, in your opinion, has triggered that? Government? Private sector? Normally, manufacturers don't do nice things for you without a real good profit motive. What, in your opinion, has been triggering?
Oh, this is the section of Jake's opinion. I love this part. I'm going to go off topic. No, I mean, the answer is it's all of the above. That is the answer. But let me just tell you something. I was hosting a roundtable at an SAA event, and we had the vice president of NADA, National Auto Dealers Association. And one of the questions I asked him was, why are people buying cars? What is bringing people into dealerships? And he said two things. One, it's the safety, getting better safety in a new car. Two, fuel economy. So I was a little surprised to hear that because, like you said, but so clearly there are people who are realizing that, you know, 19 miles per gallon is a whole lot better than 14 in that truck. 32 is the new benchmark for a midsize car. That would be unheard of 10 years ago. So there are people who really value this, and it's bringing people into dealerships. It is allowing the automakers to be very competitive in a very competitive market. So.
You talked about reliability, kind of going back to the dealer network a little bit. So your reliability is based on user surveys. So one would assume you have
Yes.
more surveys for a Camry than you would for a Range Rover. Does that also affect, because, you know, more people can buy a Camry than a Range Rover, again, kind
Sure,
of dealer network,
sure.
does that affect your reliability ratings if you have just less data for one car over another?
These are the good questions. Wow. All right, so I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet right now. No, So you're absolutely right. We do have more data for Camrys than we have Land Rovers. You know, and what that enables us to do is to get a little bit deeper into exactly what the problems go wrong with the high volume vehicles. So if you look at consumer reports online, you could actually go through and find out what component is breaking. So you could get that nitty gritty. But in terms of the cars with less sample size, we still have a considerable amount of Land Rovers, believe it or not. So we may not have 4,000 of them, but we have a substantial amount And when we look at reliability predictions, which is what we're talking about right now, what we predict, we're looking at last year's performance, the year before, and up to 3 years, as long as they're in the same generation of that vehicle. And you look at Land Rover, they're consistently problematic throughout even the lineup.
I'm just curious, maybe it's a question for Patrick, how the Genesis generated a higher score, road test score than Porsche and BMW.
Ah, there's their secret sauce. So I think so. So the quick answer to that is Genesis is not a full line manufacturer. And while it might be one thing to have a good road test of a vehicle that is a high-end luxury car, might be a little bit difficult to, you look at the BMW X1 or the BMW, some of the SUVs, to have that consistent performance along the lines. So, you look at some of the Porsches and whatnot. I mean, there's different issues with them. So it's just about more products. Is that, hopefully that's fair.
So David Bold asked about mentioned the dealer network. Do you look at dealer satisfaction at all, or how important it is? Because experiences I've had when I've taken clients out to buy vehicles is you can go to 10 different dealers and have 10 wildly different experiences. So is that involved, and maybe where do you? I know you buy your vehicles.
Yeah.
In the open market, not through a buying service or anything that I know of, but maybe it's for the Consumer Reports buying service. But can you talk a little bit about that,
Sure.
about the dealer side?
Yeah. I mean, I think you asked and kind of answered the question. We have looked at satisfaction with dealers, and you are exactly right that it's inconsistent. I know personally, I think there's 4 Honda dealerships within about 25 miles from where I live. One is probably the best dealership I've ever gone to, and one, I think, forgot to put the lug nuts on one of the cars when I left it. So, I mean, they're just really inconsistent. So we could certainly find out, like on average, what dealers are more satisfying, but unfortunately, at the point of sale, it doesn't really help that person. And certainly, we don't want people buying a certain car because the dealership experience. I mean, you go back, Saturn was very well known for a great dealership experience, and they actually were pretty consistent. But there was other issues. They did.
To make that. And I think that's one of the big issues. I recently had a client that was buying a Mercedes-Benz, and the Mercedes-Benz dealer talked to the husband, not to the wife, and the husband specifically said, it's her money, she's buying it, and the dealer looked over at her and then looked back and continued talking. They went and bought a Lexus.
Sure.
So is there an opportunity? Is this?
I think there's always an opportunity for any of the auto manufacturers to improve the dealership experience. I think it is important to people to have more consistency. Certainly would be good. Would it make a big change in terms of our ratings here? Probably not. But I think just one other thing to talk about the dealership experience, as these cars become more complicated, and as there are things beeping at you here and there, and you're not clear how to use the apps and whatnot, it almost seems like there's more of a shift that it's important that dealers properly instruct people, how to use their active cruise control or what their lane keeping assist system really does or does not do.
Jake, you mentioned that reliability is a key factor.
Yes.
Now, how do you ponder the different types of categories of vehicles? The Chevy Bolt is an electric vehicle where less things are supposed to go wrong or supposed to be going wrong.
Yeah.
A hybrid is a little bit more complicated than gasoline. Should there be 3 categories or more, depending on the type of engines and motorization?
Good question. The answer is no. So absolutely not. We are not grading on a curve. You have a choice to buy different cars, and how they make the sausage is not how we're going to rate it. So you make a very good point. Electric cars are simpler, and there are less things to go wrong. However, the Tesla Model X is right at the bottom of our reliability survey. There's other ways they can make that car have reliability issues. So the way we look at it, we're kind of agnostic when it comes to technology. If you could figure out how to make good fuel economy using, and you look at Prius. Prius has been phenomenal in terms of reliability, and should it be? It's pretty complicated, right? You know, a CVT, and it's got an engine, and it's got an electric drivetrain. So we've seen auto manufacturers able to do well with a complex technology and do poorly with a simple technology. Another question here.
This isn't a follow-up, but I am interested. Diesel powertrains.
Yes.
What is your take on the next 5 to 10 years based on what we're seeing in terms of historical issues
Yeah.
and frankly, just the vehicles as powertrains?
Sure. So in terms of diesels, there's a lot of complexity that comes from diesels, not necessarily from the diesel cycle or any of that, but in terms of the emissions treatment. So there's a lot of cost and complexity to try to get these cleaner. And as Dave was talking about earlier, we've seen phenomenal improvements in terms of the gasoline engine, getting to the point where the efficiency of a gasoline engine is approaching diesel. So again, Jake's opinion, I just see so much improvement from that gasoline engine that it may not mean that that diesel engine really makes any sense anymore because of all that extra complexity. We'll see. I mean, there's still great engineers are working on these systems, and they may be able to figure out a way of making a cleaner diesel, but it's going to be a problem trying to meet emissions with those systems. You're welcome.
Just before I ask a question, you might find it interesting when you're talking about dealers. There's one next to me, a Honda dealer.
Yeah.
It should be down somewhere at the bottom, but it's fun sometime to walk around the showroom. This guy was charging something like more than $100 because he put helium in the tires.
Nitrogen, probably.
Nitrogen, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, excuse me.
Yep.
So I thought, why do you do that? And he said, oh, well, we'd write that right off if you didn't want it. I said, why do you do it in the
It's
first
very
place?
expensive nitrogen.
Whatever.
It's all around us.
And about the fuel economy thing, I've read in several places where some of the government is getting some feedback from manufacturers saying, okay, you're going to do away with these standards that we were trying to meet come, what was it, 2025, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, we got to plan so many years ahead, da-da-da-da-da. Do you feel that there's enough feedback there to counter some of these changes?
Well, first of all, if anybody is having somebody putting helium in their tires, just make sure they stop. But I'm sorry, wrong. No, I'm sorry. But I think that's why, to your question, that's why we raise these numbers. It seems like every step along the way, and I'm not going to call out any names here, but it seems like every time there is a push for more fuel efficiency or more safety or down the line, there's always, well, we can't do it. The cars are going to be too costly. The first Cadillac converter is going to cost, $4,000 a car. No one will buy cars anymore. And none of that happened. And right now, when we're seeing these huge gains in fuel efficiency that we hope will continue, or at least stay, we're not seeing the sky falling. We're not seeing the cost. We're not seeing the safety. So I think the best that we can do is really just show what the data shows, and you be the judge. Anyone else? Anything on anyone's mind? Movie picks? I don't know. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up, and thank you all.